Hi again, it's Jamie Court. I'm president of Consumer Watchdog. We're here today because Californians are once again experiencing sky-high gasoline prices. We are, as a state, $1.17 per gallon more than the rest of the United States. And there is absolutely no good reason for this, except for the fact that 5 oil refiners control 90% of the market and have us over a barrel. These big 5 oil companies, which control 90% of the gas supply, have withheld supply from California and at the same time artificially pumped up prices at their retail gas stations. We have a name for this now. This has happened so often in history. What Californians are experiencing this Memorial Day as they take to the roads is called the Golden State Gouge. The Golden State Gouge. We also today are going to talk about an answer to the problem, which is something that people in Sacramento are only beginning to talk about after more than a decade of this Golden State Gouge affecting us. The problem is consolidation. When you have a handful of refiners, 5 refiners controlling 90% of the gas supply, when they see all these drivers hitting the roads, they squeeze that supply. Refineries go down for maintenance, prices go through the roof. Californians bleed tens of billions of dollars needlessly. And it's happened summer after summer, year after year, while the politicians in Sacramento who take big oil money have turned a blind eye. From Jerry Brown, who's taken millions from the oil companies, to Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, who despite being an environmentalist, put in charge of the California Energy Commission the husband of the head of the oil lobby. I mean, this incestuous political gene pool between the oil companies and the politicians in Sacramento have cost Californians tens of billions of dollars and allowed for this type of consolidation. Kamala Harris, the Attorney General of California, allowed for some of the biggest consolidation. The 5 companies that control 90% of the market as oil refiners that process the gasoline, that process the crude oil into gasoline, they are Chevron, Andeavor, which used to be Tesoro, Phillips, Valero, Shell. These 5 companies also control not only the refineries in the state, but also the vast majority of the retail gas stations and the price at those stations through contract. In Southern California, these 5 oil refiners control more than 80% of the gas station prices, and they keep those prices artificially high. That is one aspect of the Golden State Gouge. The other aspect is withholding needed shipments. So for those of you on the live stream, or here obviously, when refineries go down for maintenance, right as we come into a summer drive season, we have as a state the option of getting our fuel from refineries in Washington state that make our gasoline, our environmentally sensitive gasoline. Consumer Watchdog has constantly, over the past decade, in times of dry supply, when refineries go down, track shipments of gasoline with California brand gasoline coming from Washington state and going elsewhere, being exported to South America rather than being unloaded in California docks at these refineries. The ability of the oil refiners to keep our market undersupplied in order to pump up prices has been proven time and time again. We've proven it in a couple of reports I'm going to show you, but what it does is it allows the companies to artificially inflate the price of gasoline on the supply side. But the companies also control the vast majority of what we call branded gas stations. So when they control 80% of the market, companies like Chevron, Shell, Valero, 66, when they control these gas stations, what happens is they deliver fuel and they tell the station owners, we're going to charge you a certain price. That price in the last 3 to 4 years has been consistently 20 to 30 cents more than the price they charge independent gas companies, and there's a very small sector. World Oil, United, Costco. That is closer to the true price of gas. So at every branded gas station in the state, the price of gasoline, just because the oil companies can, is 20 to 30 cents higher than the price at independent gas stations for the same gasoline. The companies are using their power over the retail market to pump up the price and pad the price of gasoline by 20 to 30 cents on top of the added price they've already added at the pump because they keep the market from having enough supply. What this means is, if you look at a $1.17 gap with America on gasoline, 30 to 40 cents is higher taxes, environmental formulations, carbon credits. The other 75 to 85 cents more we pay per gallon is pure profiteering. It's pure profits to the oil refiners. So on every $1.17 per gallon, we pay more than the rest of America. 35 cents, maybe 40 cents is a cost that's hard. It's taxes, it's carbon credits, environmental standards. 75 to 80 cents is pure profit for the oil refiners. We need to take that pure profit back. The oil companies in California have owned the California Energy Commission until something happened recently, which changed the dynamic. Governor Gavin Newsom was elected after taking a pledge not to take any oil company money. And suddenly, the California Energy Commission reported back to the governor at his request, just on May 15th, that preliminary estimates show, quote, at least part of the explanation could be the practice of higher priced brand retailers of gasoline, Chevron, Shell, Exxon, Mobil, to charge higher prices than unbranded ARCO and hyper market retailers for essentially the same product. While this practice is not necessarily illegal, it may be an effort of a segment of the market to artificially in prices to the detriment of California consumers and could account for at least part of the price differential. The California Energy Commission has finally acknowledged potential irregularities, quote, potential irregularities in retail gas prices, as well as on the supply side. This has happened since 2015, when the Exxon refinery blew up in California. We've noticed this, and we've told the state authorities about this for the last 4 years. Finally, the California Energy Commission has acknowledged this artificial inflation of prices. There is, by the way, a class action case going on in San Diego over this practice right now in federal court that just survived a motion for it to be ended, and they're in discovery. We've been subpoenaed even though we're not a party to the case because of our research. Let me share that research that is in this court case, and that hopefully as state authorities continue to look at this, they'll look at. First, we did a report in February of 2016. This was a year after the refinery blew up, and we were experiencing $1.50 a gallon more in gas prices than the rest of America. And we found when Exxon, which had a refinery in Torrance, said it couldn't bring gas in, we found a tanker, the flagship tanker for Exxon, the SR American Progress, spending months off the coast of Singapore at the height of our gasoline prices right near a refinery. They made California gasoline, just sitting idle. They manipulate the ships, the oil refiners, that bring product in. They manipulate the refineries by bringing them down. They don't supply the market. They keep it running on empty. The second thing we noticed around the same time was that as the gas prices spiked in 2015, so did the profits for the refiners. All gas price spikes are really almost directly correlated to profit spikes. So in 2015, the amount of money refiners collected for each gallon of gas set a record after this refinery blew up and they didn't bring the ships in. It was margins were $1.61 for branded gas stations, triple their returns earlier. That was in a report called the Golden State Gouge. It's all on our website, by the way, at Consumer Watchdog, from August of 2015. Then we looked at refining profits over a 10-year period. Looked at all gas price spikes over a 10-year period. We found that every time there was a gas price spike in a 10-year period, there was a corresponding profit spike. That's a report called Refining Profits, How Californians Got Fleeced, May 2016. And for those of you who are looking on this board, it's really pronounced. You see, in 2013, 12, regular times, profits are modest. But then you see the price go up, and for all the companies in California that reported their refining profits, we saw those profits spike almost directly in relationship to the price. Which leads us to where we are today. California can get our money back from the oil refiners. It's very simple. And we call on the governor, who's done a great job of actually acknowledging the problems in the market through his CEC, to take action. We call on the legislature to take action. The action is simple. Californians need to enact a windfall profits tax on oil refiners. When prices spike, meaning they go up more than 20 cents in a week or two, and it's not matched by a corresponding price increase in the national average, Californians should look closely at the books of the oil refiners, and the oil refiners should be telling us what they're making in profits from California refineries because of this price spike. If the profits spike, we should put an excessive profits tax on the oil companies and get that money back. And it's not that hard to do. It's not that hard to do for a simple reason. It's not that hard to do because the oil companies have hard fixed costs. We know what the cost of their crude is. We know what their production and distribution costs. And we also know that the oil refiners keep track of their profits on the West Coast, and only some of them report them to the public, not all of them. We're calling on the governor and the legislature to enact legislation within the next 2 months, this summer, that will say oil refiners have to report their profits from West Coast oil refining whenever there are these gas price spikes, whenever there's a big difference with America, and there's going to be a 90% tax on profits that are over a certain level, that are much higher than they should be. So when profits spike, we take back the money and give it back to Californians in the form of a check, the form of a tax credit, could be in the form of a reduction in the gas tax. We put it back right to the motorists at the pump who are getting ripped off today. And I can tell you, that windfall profits tax legislation will succeed if refiners know they're going to be taxed when they have a windfall in profits. We are not going to see a $1.17 gap with American gas prices. Oil refiners are not going to want to give the money back at the end of the day. We did this with health insurance companies, if you think about it, through Obamacare, because health insurance companies can only make between 15 and 20% of a dollar for their own profits and administration. Oil refiners shouldn't be able to make tens of billions of dollars off Californians through this Golden State Gouge. We should get the money from the gouge back, and it's pretty easy to do. It takes the will. We have a way. We're appealing to Governor Newsom, who did really a very good thing in his May revise. The governor said, look, oil companies have us over a barrel. I'm going to put a couple of $1 million towards a study for a planned decline in our petroleum usage and our petroleum supply as well, meaning oil drilling. And we need to plan this out so there's a transition away so oil companies don't have us over a barrel, both because of climate change and because oil companies gouge us. This is the first governor I think understands that there is a relationship between oil companies ripping us off at the pump summer after summer and climate change, which is causing catastrophic fires in California and destroying communities. We got to do something about it, and we've got to do something not only about the long-term consequences of the oil industry dependence, but we have to do something about the short-term gouge. This windfall profits tax is an easy solution. We're hoping legislators will actually step up to the table now that they know they have a governor who might actually consider this legislation. And we hope it gets going this summer, because this summer is when we are going to face this gouge again. And every time we fill up at the pump, ka-ching, ka-ching, you hear the profits in the oil refiners' bank accounts. They should know that money comes back to Californians if they're making basically excess profits. Oil refiners should be able to profiteer. It's no different than after a hurricane, because oil companies have consolidated. They can do this. It doesn't mean they should. We can stop them. So I'm going to open up to any questions. Let me open up the line. And and we're hoping that the governor and the legislature take this seriously. And also, I should say, the governor has said, the Energy Commission in its analysis on the 15th has said that it wants to study this problem. It's going to take 5 months. I'm all for studying this problem for 5 months, but we shouldn't wait for action. We should enact this windfall profits tax now before the study is completed, because if there are no windfall profits, there'll be no tax. What's the harm? It's the ultimate litmus test for the oil refiners. If they're not getting rich, off our gas money, then they don't have to give it back. And if they are, well, they should. So, anyway, anyone have a question? Anyone on the line? You can speak up and say your name. Sorry? Go ahead. Yes.
What is your strategy for getting this through, given that they're going to have a two-thirds vote for a tax, and as you probably know, many of the more moderate Democrats are going to resist this, and I've written about how many of them take money from the oil industry. So can you enlighten us on how you think you can get this through, given those barriers?
Well, my view of this is that the oil companies often win votes in Sacramento because they twist the proposals around to say it's going to raise the price at the pump. Any politician who's a Democrat or a Republican who wants to vote against a windfall profits tax on oil companies that gives Californians money back in the bank is welcome to, and they may not be in Sacramento next time around. So whether this comes through this time or next time, if I'm a politician who wants to see this happen, I'm going to put all my members on the spot, because I think it's very hard to oppose a windfall profits tax, because it's all about getting people money back when they've been gouged. And if there are Sacramento politicians who want to vote no, or who want to, what they do in Sacramento when they don't want to vote no and they can't vote yes, is they take a walk. We call them not votes, but they're present and getting paid. Believe me, those votes will be part of their record, and they're going to have to really think about whether they should be in public office. We finally have the Democratic Party of California declining oil company contributions after taking an awful lot of money from them during the Brown era. That was a big development last year. We finally have a governor and other politicians who have taken an oil pledge. If there are enough big oil Democrats to stop this in Sacramento, you know what? They'll always be known as big oil Democrats, and they don't have cover on a vote like this to say, well, I'm worried about it raising the cost of gas, so I'm not going to vote for it. I'm worried about the working people in Sacramento and other places who are going to pay too much at the pump if we put in these environmental standards. You know what? This is about taking back windfall profits. If those people who voted last time under the guise of raising the cost at the pump for their middle-class consumers says now they're going to vote against a windfall profits tax, they don't have that argument. Their only argument is we don't want to unduly burden our friends, the oil companies, who have given us, tens of thousands of dollars to get elected. That's not a great argument. And if those politicians want to make that argument, and I'm sure they don't, then they can vote their conscience here. And if that's their conscience, then we'll see how history remembers them. We'll certainly be making the argument that they voted the way they voted if they don't have a good argument against it, because they are helping the oil industry. I mean, this is a pretty simple proposal, and unlike most of the proposals in Sacramento, you can't argue it hurts anyone but the oil companies.
Just a follow-up question. Have you talked to Governor Newsom, and if so, what has he said about this?
Well, as he said at his May Revise conference, we have talked about this, and I know I think the Energy Commission investigation is evidence that he's serious about getting to the bottom of the problem. And while he has not yet voiced an opinion on the solution, he does have open ears, and I appreciate that, because the last governor, I'm not even sure, had ears. Anyone else with a question? On the line? In the room? Okay. Oh, okay. No? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. If anyone has any follow-up questions, you know where to find us. 310-392-0075. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Nice overview. You said it all.